Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. Coming up tonight, Angela Rayner has been speaking today at the TUC conference, making, I quote, cast iron commitments when it comes to workers' rights. She's also saying she wants to strengthen the role of trade unions within this country. So I'm asking you, is that a sentiment that you would agree with? And today marks the beginning of the end, very sadly, for Wilko's as the fair stores close their doors forever. Round about now. Some people are saying that we need a royal charter to save the high street in Britain. Do we? What does that even mean? And does the high street have a place in our lives like it once did? And you know the drill on Dewbs & Co. It's not just about me, it's very much about you. So one of my debates tonight is driven by your comments last night. We were talking about dangerous dogs, in particular the Bully XL dogs. I was saying that I think that they need to be banned. Lots of you very strongly disagreeing with me, but also lots of you saying that you felt that all dogs should be muzzled in public. You heard me right. All dogs muzzled in public. Would you support that? You were divided last night, and I want to get into it with my panel tonight. And last but not least, people who litter. I cannot bear littering. What is wrong with you? Anyway, there's talk now about if you go through a drive-through, do you think that your car license plate should be printed on the packaging? So if indeed you cannot help yourself but be so burn idle that you feel a need to chuck your packaging out the window, you will be tracked down and fined. Would you support that or not? Before we get into it, we've got lots more to come as well, but let's get up to speed with tonight's latest headlines, because she's back, everybody. Polly Middlehurst.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. Our top story tonight on GB News. Poundland owner Pepco has agreed to buy up to 71 Wilko high street chain stores. That comes as the retailer prepares to close 24 outlets today, with the rest to shut by next month. That means over 12,000 jobs are now at risk, although Poundland says they do plan to offer roles to some Wilko team members where possible. But Barclays Bank is cutting over 450 jobs, and Unite, the union which represents employees at the bank, has branded the decision unnecessary and unjustified. They say it'll leave people concerned about their job security and livelihoods. They've criticised Barclays for cutting jobs at a time when it's making big profits. Well, the other main story on GB News today is we can reveal that more than 3,250 migrants have crossed the English Channel over the last 11 days. That coincides with the longest run of good weather so far this year. Home Office figures show that 144 Channel migrants crossed yesterday in 3 small boats. Today, we believe 3 small boats have crossed carrying 120 people. But the total figure is 17% down on the same period last year. Now, we had some breaking news into the newsroom today. We were told that a residential street in Glasgow had to be evacuated after someone had discovered a suspected unexploded ordnance device in their garden. Police Scotland say they were called shortly after midday after the individual reported digging it up. The explosive ordnance disposal team has been dispatched to the property and a cordon is in place, we understand, and people in surrounding properties have been asked to leave their homes as a precaution until the item can be safely disposed of. More details on that coming to us all the time. We'll bring you in later bulletins. Now, moving overseas, and the Republican Speaker of the House of Representatives has called for an impeachment inquiry into US President Joe Biden. Kevin McCarthy says lawmakers in his party have uncovered serious and credible allegations into the president's conduct, labelling it a culture of corruption. Republicans have accused the Democrat leader of profiting while he served as vice president from 2009 to 2017 through his son Hunter Biden's foreign business ventures. The White House says there is no basis for any investigation. And staying with foreign news, North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un is in Russia ahead of a meeting with President Putin. It's only the 7th time he's actually left his country, although his last trip to Russia was in 2019. The two leaders are expected to discuss a deal to supply humanitarian aid to North Korea in exchange for supplying Russia with munitions for its war against Ukraine. It comes amid warnings from Washington that the two countries should not be agreeing on an arms deal. Now, Surrey police say they're working to secure the safe return of Sarah Sharif's 5 siblings from Pakistan. The 10-year-old girl was found dead at her home in Woking in Surrey last month. Her father, stepmother and uncle fled the UK a day before with all her siblings. Well, Surrey police say they're working with their international partners after a Pakistani court ruled the children would be temporarily moved to a government childcare facility in Pakistan. Stars of sport and reality TV were meeting at Downing Street today to discuss online safety. That's as the Online Safety Bill returned to the House of Commons for its final reading. The planned law imposed new legal duties on big tech companies to crack down on online trolls. Michelle Donnellan, who's the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, says it'll make the UK the safest place in the world to be online.
So via this bill, we're making cyber flashing illegal, we're making intimate image abuse illegal, and we're also making the promotion of self-harm illegal. This is going to be transformational. It is going to be groundbreaking.
And lastly, the Princess of Wales has been seen with an injured hand while on a visit to a prison in Surrey. She was pictured with her right index and middle fingers taped together, saying she'd injured herself at home while on a trampoline. Kensington Palace saying it's nothing particularly serious. The future Queen went to see how prisoners at HMP Highdown are supported to manage and recover from addiction. You're with GB News across the UK on your TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Thanks for that, Polly. Before you head off, though, I must say, lots of my viewers very happy to see you back. Believe it or not, Polly, you have been very missed with my viewers. They've often asked me, where is Polly Middlehurst? So where have you been?
Oh, thank you for asking. I went to Scotland. I took the overnight sleeper train from Euston to Fort William, stayed in a little hotel overlooking a loch, went to the Ben Nevis distillery to see how whiskey was made, and then took the train back and spent lots of time in the garden.
How the other half live, ladies and gents. Isn't it nice, Polly? Train journeys.
Oh, yes.
I don't want to go all Michael Portillo on you or anything, but there's something special, isn't there, don't you think? And did you get nice and dressed up? Was you one of them, or did you just go in your casuals, or what?
If I ever went on the Orient Express, which is my next ambition, that's exactly what I'd do. I'd take my pearls and my tiara and I'd jazz it all up with that kind of style, yeah.
Oh, well, I love it. I'm done with my nosy Parker. Yeah, shall I just leave you alone now and let you head off? I'm sure you've got other things to do, but it's nice to have you back, Polly Midlairs. I, for one, have missed you. Anyway, I am Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, a face I've not seen again for a while, former MEP, Baroness Jacqueline Foster. Welcome back. I feel like I've not seen you in ages. Don't know why.
Feels like that. Yeah.
Everyone's going on holiday, I think, other than me and the former editor of Labour List. Peter Edwards, welcome.
Thank you.
Have you been on any train journeys any time recently?
Yeah, I went on a Heritage Line, the steam railway in North Yorkshire this summer, which was great fun. And next time I have to take Michael Portillo.
Oh, yes. Do train journeys, is that your kind of thing or not?
Oh, came up with Avanti from Liverpool on
That's not the same thing.
But no, I like trains. I used to Eurostar a lot, obviously. And I think it's a lovely way, even though I'm sort of very aviation-orientated.
You are, indeed.
Which was my whole life. I love train journeys. I like ships as well, so...
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know why. You can tell me what you think, ladies and gents at home. There's just, to me, something really special. I don't mean about, I don't know, your Hull to Bridlington. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your nice kind of, those beautiful scenic train journeys that you do. And I really do like it, actually, when people get all dressed up quite smartly and all the rest of it. Are you buying into that? Or are you saying, shut up, Michelle, and get on with the programme? You get in touch and tell me your thoughts. And speaking about you, it's not just, I say this every night, it's not just about us, it is about you. And last night, if you were watching, you might recall we had a brief conversation at the top of the hour about these dangerous dogs, so-called dangerous dogs, these XL bullies, and what the answer was to do with them. Suella Braverman was talking tough and all the rest of it. Anyway, long story short, for those of you that weren't watching, many of you guys at home were getting in touch with me. You thought that my stance was incredibly harsh. I read all of your emails. I've got to say, some of you kind of converted me a little bit to your way of thinking. But one of the things that jumped out at me from the inbox last night was the sheer amount of you last night that were getting in touch with me, telling me that you think that all dogs, your words, not mine, all dogs should be muzzled in public. Even as I mentioned at the start of my programme, many of you still getting in touch with that sentiment again tonight. So I want to debate it properly, because I know many of you will completely disagree with that sentiment, and I want to throw it open to my panel as well. But I've got lots more coming your way before I get on to that one. So get in touch with the GB Views at gbnews.com is how you email me, or you can tweet me at GB News. But, of course, top story tonight. You might be familiar with the fact that Angela Rayner has been over in Liverpool speaking out at the TUC conference. And this whole kind of red wall, so to speak, and who is going to win that battle for the hearts and the minds of the red wall, that'll be the pressure point, the pinch point, I think, at the next election. Anyway, she was talking quite tough today, specifically when it came to workers' rights. Let me just have a little listen, play for you some of the things that she had to say.
Labour's New Deal for working people will transform ordinary working people's lives. Work will finally pay. Rights will be properly enforced, and crucially, it will strengthen the role of trade unions in our society.
Strengthen the role of trade unions in our society. In a second, I'll come to you, Jacqueline, because I know that you were very heavily involved in trade unions. But before I do that, it'd be rude not to start with you, given it was Labour speaking out today, Peter. What did you make to some of the things you heard? And specifically, do you think that we need stronger trade unions in this country?
We certainly need stronger trade unions. I thought what Angela Rayner said was pretty sensible, and I've no doubt parts of the press or parts of the Conservative Party will say otherwise. But it's just a fact that there's been attack on trade union rights over the last 13 years or so by various Conservative governments. I'd say a couple of things. First of all, whichever type of trade union you're in, if you end up in industrial action, as I was when I was a newspaper reporter many years ago, you do that out with great reluctance. There's a sense that people in trade unions are, according to some newspapers, rabid militant types. That's not the case. People go on industrial action as a last resort because they care about their readers or their patients or their school kids or their railway passengers and so on, and they give up their pay in doing so. The other point I'd make is that frequently we've seen over the last decade or so, rather than getting round the table and have a negotiation, because there's always disagreements in a workplace, government ministers have tended to bring in new laws, which is what Angela Rayner has pledged today to reverse. For example, you have full employment rights after 2 years rather than 1, and the threshold for a strike ballot is much higher than it used to be. But these are not things that are bringing workers together with government and business and helping the economy grow. They're spiteful attacks by the Conservatives, I'm afraid.
Cool, blimey, spiteful attacks by the Conservatives, Jacqueline. And just before we respond to that, explain a little bit your involvement previously with unions.
Well, when I started flying many, many decades ago, I actually became a shop steward for the Transport and General Workers Union. And at that time, we didn't have pensions. This was the girls. We didn't have any seniority at all. And that was around mid-70s, late 70s, when obviously the Equal Pay Act came about. We obviously moved all of this forward. So I was a negotiator about 3 years. A number of years later, I'd left BA, gone back. And in 1989, a number of us formed a breakaway union called Cabin Crew 89. And I was basically the Deputy General Secretary, and I negotiated for the next 10 years until I became an MEP, the terms and conditions for
So strong history then. So what do you feel now when Peter says essentially a government that you're connected with in some shape or form is essentially doing spiteful attacks on said unions?
Well, it's very typical of the left because they think that anybody that doesn't support the Labour Party necessarily or vote for them has no interest in people's workplaces and the terms and conditions or anything like that. And that couldn't be actually further from the truth, because what most of us know is if you've got a happy group of people working in a company or working in a TV studio, then you're going to get better results and better productivity. The whole point of the trade union reform in the 80s, which was the Thatcher government, was because we had been basically pretty well destroyed this country during the 70s, the winters of discontent and all of those things. And we had a long way to go to try and change that. It was Norman Tebbit that was behind a lot of that reform. And a lot of members of trade unions also supported that because they felt as though they were being dragged into these horrendous situations and very often losing their jobs and industries were closing. And that was why we formed that particular union, which was a non-politically affiliated union. And I was fully behind that. So I do think, I mean, I had a look to see what Angela Rayner was saying. And, you know, she said, we'll ban 0-hour contracts. Well, there are a lot of people that like to work on a 0-hour contract because it might suit them. There are all sorts of different flexible contracts that we do have. But if we bring it back to the situation we've had over the last 12 months, for example, with the rail strikes and the RMT, you know, as a former negotiator, you're right, it's not easy negotiating, but by the same token, I am in despair at the RMT and really what's going on with the railways and also with the NHS. We have minimum service levels across other European countries to make sure.
But do you back these new anti-strike, what people are calling anti-strike laws?
I don't believe that they're anti-strike laws at all.
And Labour, to your point, Rayner, she says basically in the first 100 days they're going to get rid of them.
Yeah, we're not talking about Thatcher reforms. We're talking about getting rid of changes introduced in the last 10 years or so. So very briefly, the minimum service level is basically an attempt to criminalise workers who are participating in industrial action.
No, it's not.
By making it harder for people to kind of opt out of the workplace, which they're doing.
Where's the criminal? Because she's saying that's not what it is.
Not what it
is. They'll make it against the law.
No, you said they were going to attempt to criminalise people, you know, not performing minimum service. Like, where's the criminalisation bit? Who's going to get done?
Because if you fail to turn up to work, you'll be breaking the law.
And what will happen to you? You think you're going to have all these people in prison? Is he spot on with what he's saying?
That would be remarkable if we end up in prison. But very briefly, I'll go to Jacqueline. I think it is being subject to challenge in the courts prior to by the unions.
They're entitled to challenge anything. At the end of the day, we were looking at minimum service levels when you're looking at the NHS and you're looking at critical services. Now, we're all very happy that the police don't go on strike, thank goodness. We're very happy that the armed forces don't go on strike and they end up having to bail us out in various situations. And I do not believe it's acceptable.
But that's because they can't. So if they could, they probably would.
No, that's only because it would be illegal for them to do so. Now, we're not saying, and I'm not saying, that other areas like the NHS and other big big organisations shouldn't have the right to strike. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying and what we've been trying to do is at least ensure that there are minimum service standards, there's minimum cover, like they have in other countries across Europe and across the world, to ensure if there is industrial action, that the public do not suffer, that their lives are not in danger. And that is what the minimum service levels mean.
What about this 0 hours contract thing? Because as Jacqueline was just saying, there's talk about scrapping them. But if someone wants to work on a 0 hours contract, they've already got rid of the... before, what they used to do is if you was on a 0 hours contract, they used to prohibit you from going anywhere else to try and top up your hours, which absolutely was appalling if you ask me. Anyway, you can't really do that anymore. No. So these 0 hour contracts, they're for people that, for whatever reason, you know, they might be studying or they might have caring responsibilities or whatever, so the flexibility is valued. Why is it therefore for a government then to say, actually, no, you can't do that anymore?
Well, my understanding, Michelle, is that it's not a total scrapping, it's a ban on certain types. I'm happy to be corrected.
Well, it says here that the New Deal for working people, so this is what the proposals are called, would include protections against unfair dismissal, their words, not mine, a ban on 0 hour contracts, more flexible working, and ending the principle of fire and rehire, which is basically when people try and get rid of all their workforce and then rehire them and pretty much 5 minutes later on different T's and C's. So as I understand it, that is what they would be trying to do, get rid of that 0 hour concept and principle.
To be frank, I'd be amazed if that would happen, for the reasons you rightly outlined, that there's a small proportion of workers that like that flexibility. Often it's people studying or maybe working for temporary periods or got caring responsibilities. Very briefly, you made the point that exclusivity is a bad thing, where an old employer used to say, you can only work for us and only be 10 hours a week. That would be unfair, but allowing some room for flexibility under some types of 0 hours contracts, I think there probably is a little bit of a case for that.
I've got to say, I've spoken to a lot of carers for various reasons recently, and what I find pretty appalling is sometimes they work on these flexible contracts, which is fair enough, but then they're only getting paid when they arrive at the job. So I don't know, they're pedalling on their bikes or whatever it is, and they arrive at the person's home, and then that's when the timesheet essentially starts work. So it doesn't take into account all of their travel. I think that is pretty unfair, don't you? So do you think that Labour are the party to get a hold of the workers' rights in this country and make it better, make work pay for people?
But they were paid like that when they were in power. That's not changed in the last 13 years of carers. Well, carers that were going around local authorities and they were not being paid to travel from A to B. Because that's nothing new. That's not being brought out by...
It's not right, though,
I
is it?
completely agree with you. I think that there should be a far better way of making sure that they're paid for the time they take to go from one patient to another. I think Michelle's
point was that the usage of that has increased a lot more, and it will only increase further with an ageing
Well, I
population.
don't believe that's the case at all.
I just think it's pretty damn... I just think it's pretty damn shameful.
The Blair government could have changed that. They were in power for 13 years. They didn't.
Well, I blame it on all of them, quite frankly. Yeah. I think, why is the society, whoever's in power, I don't really care, quite frankly. I'm not wedded to them in that way, but why don't we value our carers as a society? It's one of the hardest things that we can do for people physically, often having to lift people, I don't know, however many times your size, your weight and all the rest of it, do really personal things for people, and we give people minimum wage.
Yeah.
I mean, what is wrong with our society? Anyway, Wilko stores, it is the beginning of the end, because round about now, the first of those stores have closed forever. There's calls for a royal charter to help rescue our high street. Do we need that? Do we even need the high street as it once was? You, tell me.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry till 7 o'clock tonight. The former MEP and Baroness Jacqueline Foster alongside me, as is the former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards. Lots of you guys getting in touch. Don't forget, the thing that's got you talking again tonight is the viewer suggestion from last night that all dogs, yes, I'm quoting some of my viewers properly, all dogs should be muzzled in public. God blimey, lots of strong opinions coming in on that. But back to trade unions, John says, giving trade unions more power, you must be joking. They brought the country to its knees. You're a harsh man, though, John, because you say that no public sector worker should be allowed to strike at all. Whew. Any public sector workers out there that disagree with John? I suspect there might be a few. Lots of people having that opinion, though. Stronger trade unions, they're already basically holding all the trump cards. What will be next, says Joe? Mick Lynch for Prime Minister? Well, I don't know. Keep your thoughts coming in on that one. But I want to talk to you about the high streets. We've been familiar with this story for a bit now. We're talking about Wilko, will it survive, won't it survive, and all the rest of it. Well, some of the first Wilko stores have closed their doors for good forever as of tonight. 400 stores will be shut down by the end of October, and sadly it looks like around 12,000 people could potentially lose their jobs. Lots of people have been getting involved on this. The chair of John Lewis as well. In fact, actually, I'll come to you. I'll start with you on this one, Jacqueline. The chair of John Lewis has been calling, not for a royal charter that I don't know why I'm calling it a royal charter. I think I need to go to sleep, quite frankly, and get up again. Yeah, a royal commission. So basically what she's saying is that you've had about 6,000 shops have closed down in the last 5 years. It's time for a proper top-down look at what is going on in the high street, is it?
Well, first of all, I think the good news is I think Poundland have come in with the administrators and they have agreed to buy a proportion of the shops. So hopefully that is positive. That means that hopefully there will be jobs, some jobs that will be saved. I think a substantial number as well. I think we need a bit more information on that. That's only very recent. In times of the high street, we don't need royal commissions or royal anything. The fact of the matter is, if we go back about 40 years, if we go back to the introduction of supermarkets, you may recall, and then the escalation of out-of-town shopping, that was the beginning, in a way, of the decline of the high street. And And, you know, we've all had discussions about the supermarkets taking over from the small shops, whether it was the card and the cigarettes and the cards and whatever, and then they started to be able to sell all of those sorts of things.
And Wilko will have benefited from the demise of, like, Woolworths, for example?
Yeah, there'll be some of that. So, and then, of course, if you look at the last 20 years, I mean, how many of us are sitting here and how many are watching? How much do you do online? The amount of stuff, and me too, I bank online, I've travelled a lot and worked abroad and everything. I buy stuff online, I get the dog food online, and I think it's about now, how are you going to have a real rethink of how we regenerate some of these high streets and the things that you can do. So you think you turn it round. You don't need an inquiry. We need to look at business rates, and local authorities are responsible pretty well for the business rates. There are far too many charity shops in high streets. They all on reduced business rates. I've no idea why, because a lot of these charities are very, very wealthy indeed. A lot of these small businesses, you know, they've got their house up, the mortgage to try and make sure that they can keep their business going. So there's got to be a real rethink on this. So the councils need to look also, oh, you can't park anywhere, you can't drive in anywhere. So they've made it difficult also for families to come in and do their shopping around the high street. So they need to be able to look at that and make it, you know, a reasonable price as well. They could widen pavements and things to make sure it's a little bit al fresco. So you're coming in to do a bit of shopping, let's go to the cafe. And I think there are a number of things that could be done and are not being done. They are being done in some places because we're not going to be able to turn the clock back. I mean, we are where we are electronically now with, you know, with all of the technology we've got. So I think we're just going to have to start thinking outside the box, and those responsible need to start putting in place measures where we can encourage our build-up, I think, of our high streets again.
I remember when I was a kid, and we used to say, right, we're going down road, right? And what that meant, it was a specific type of road. You want any old road. It was what I look back on now and call a high street. And it had every single thing that you could possibly think of. It used to have your butchers, just anything. And no point listing everything, because everything was, you know, contained down one really busy, thriving street. It's not like that anymore for a variety of reasons that Jacqueline, for example, has still you've just been pointing out. So do you think we're a little bit misty-eyed about, oh, you know, revive the high street, keep the high street, help the high street? Has life just moved on?
Well, a bit of both. Being misty-eyed is always a risk, and that would be my criticism of folk like UKIP. But we can do...
UKIP? What's UKIP got to do with it?
Well, I think that's a different point entirely, but I think they hark back to another era in Britain that might not exist. In terms of what we can do to the high street...
Random segue, but go on,
I don't
continue.
think that's right, but I think we can do something to revive the high street. Jacqueline, as you said, kind of explained some of the reasons about where we are today. I'm really sad about Wilkinson's, and I'm really sad about everyone who worked at Wilkinson's.
Are you sad about Wilkinson's, or are you just saying that because you think you should? What are you sad about not having a Wilkinson's on your high street?
Well, for two reasons. One, because I shop there regularly, and two, because I'm in a trade union and I think of everyone whose job is at risk. So there's two reasons. But you asked a point about what can we do next. So I think some of it, Jacqueline didn't talk so much about, is about the tax system as well. Labour said it would reform the business rate system because the business rate system, I think all parties would say, is quite old-fashioned, and it ends up with smaller firms, and it is often small firms, as you alluded to, that did fill the high street are used in the 80s and 90s. Small firms pay a higher proportion of turnover or sales in business rates. At the same time, you have some enormous corporations, at some point global, who pay minuscule business rates bills, and they can manage to pay less in corporation tax because they have vast teams of advisors and lawyers. And then thirdly, there's online sales. Well, clearly, internet shopping's not going to go away, is it? We all like to shop online. It's easy. You can browse around. Sometimes it's cheaper. But there's a bit of an inequality in the tax system between bricks and mortar retailers and online retailers, and I think that's something Labour might have a look at as well.
True that. Are you guys sad at home that Wilko is no more? I mean, I've got to confess, I am really sad for all of those families that are affected, that have perhaps lost their jobs and all the rest of it. I feel really sorry for those guys. But as for missing the brand, I don't feel sad that Wilko is not going to be around anymore, because life moved on. They didn't keep up with it. Your B&Ms, your Home Bargains, all this and all all that and all the other. They've popped up absolutely everywhere. Wilco didn't compete. If you ask me, the management of that business let those staff down. So I feel very sad for everybody that's involved in losing their jobs. But I won't feel a loss, if I do confess, at the brand not being present on the high street. Am I missing anything? You get in touch and you tell me. But for now, speaking of high streets, we like to go there when it's sunny, don't we? Did you see what I did there? Let's look at the weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, it'll be feeling much more like autumn across the UK to start tomorrow morning, but it'll stay cloudy and milder across the southeast. That's because the milder air is being more confined to the southeast as this front has cleared eastwards across the country throughout today. It's brought quite a lot of heavy rain, and that rain will continue across southeastern areas through this evening. Continued risk of thunderstorms until around 8 or 9 o'clock. But then behind that, we get a lot of cloud across the southeast, some rain and drizzle still over the hills and the coast, but many areas seeing clear and dry weather across the rest of the UK, and it will feel much chillier tonight than recently. A touch of frost is possible tomorrow morning in any sheltered Scottish glens. A good deal of sunshine to start the day across the bulk of the country. However, the cloud will thicken through the day, particularly across the northwest, and also elsewhere we'll get some fair weather cloud bubbling up. But in the northwest, we'll see some rain arriving as well. And the temperatures will be a little bit below average for the time of year here. Elsewhere, much closer to the September average, highs of about 18 or 19 degrees. Now, the rain pushes down from Scotland into northern England on Thursday, leaving many parts of northern England and Wales with a damp and cloudy day. Elsewhere, though, drier with a risk of showers in the north. And in the south and east, it will be milder and drier once again. It stays warm across the southeast into the weekend with cooler, fresher weather, more restricted to the north.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, there you go. What is the weather doing near where you are? I've got to say, I wasn't paying attention to that weather forecast because we were talking already. We've moved on. We've been talking about those dogs. And I'm really fascinated to get into this one after the break with you because last night, you, the viewer, you were suggesting something to me, and I can tell you now, it really divided opinion last night, and it's done so again tonight. You, some of you at home, last night were suggesting to me that all dogs should be muzzled in public. Your words, your thoughts, not mine. Should they be? Get in touch, you tell me, and I'll see you in 2.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB Newsers, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 alongside me, the former MEP and now Baroness Jacqueline Foster and former editor of Labellist Peter Edwards. Lots of people getting in touch about high streets. Paddy says the high street as we knew it is now dead. High streets now need to be all about leisure, social life, pubs, restaurants, cafes, you name it, bookies. I would say actually, Paddy, got to be honest with you, I think there's one too many bookies on the high street. I don't really like that, you know, especially when they're in quite deprived areas. There seem to be quite a few, often in close proximity. I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bit old-fashioned. Who's this? Anne, she says, shopping on the high street these days has lost its magic because the customer is basically expected to self-serve everywhere you go. What happened to customer service? I hear you. Now, I always say the same, don't I, that this show, it's not just about us, it's very much about you guys at home. Now, I was talking about these XL bully dogs and the attack. You might have seen it, the one in Birmingham, the latest one anyway in Birmingham, where a little 11-year-old was attacked and then loads of guys, or at least 2 other guys, were attacked by an out-of-control dog. I was personally saying that, you know what, I think it is time actually to start looking at banning these types of dogs or the breeds or whatever it is, and I supported Suella Braverman in her quest to kind of put a review into this. I was then pondering, I must confess, what do you do then about all the dogs that exist already? And I said, well, personally, I think you round them up and very sadly, you have to put them down. People were outraged. People were furious with me, Peter, for suggesting such a thing. Lots of you guys got in touch and I read and I listened and I looked at all of your comments and I started to turn a little bit and think maybe I was a little bit harsh with that suggestion. But notwithstanding that, I do feel that people have to feel safe when they're out and about when it comes to other people's dogs. I'm not a dog owner. I know you're not either. So I'll come to you first. So just a member of the public that's not a dog owner. My viewers last night, lots of them suggested all dogs, their words, not mine, should be muzzled in public. What do you think to that?
To be honest, on muzzling all dogs, I think I'd probably defer to the experts because there's such a huge range as this pretty horrific story shows.
But as a member of public walking around the street, so I don't need you to be an expert, I need you to just be a random member of the public like anyone is, going about your daily business, shopping, park or whatever, would you feel safer if all dogs were muzzled?
I'd feel safer, absolutely. The question is whether that's proportionate in law. So I think there's certainly a case for banning this type called American Bully XL dogs, which one of the experts quoted this week described as probably the most dangerous dog breed he'd ever seen, which is alarming. I feel very sorry for this poor 11-year-old girl who suffered an attack, and clearly it could have been a lot worse. I discovered one thing that I didn't know actually this week, that it's not just an offence on the part of the owner if a dog attacks someone, but merely putting someone else, the ordinary person, in fear of their safety is a criminal offence as well. So I think we've got to encourage dog owners to take a bit more responsibility, and clearly the risks will be much higher around dangerous dogs.
You see, because I think there is a balance in society. I mean, we are a nation of dog lovers. I recognise that lots of people are getting in touch with me tonight. They're absolutely appalled by this notion. They're saying, actually, if you want to control anyone, it's the owners. You want to put a muzzle on anyone, stick a muzzle on a lot of these owners, and that would help society. You want to put anyone down, they're saying, leave the dogs alone, go for the owners. Lots of that sentiment coming through on this inbox, that it is not the dogs, it is the owners. Who's this? Ross says 90% of dog owners, in capitals, he says, cannot control their dogs. He says muzzles, though, are not the answer. And he gives me a very long email as to all the different suggestions that he has. What do you make to it all?
Well, the first thing is where I would agree with him, the vast majority of dog owners are good. Some of these attacks, and this awful one on this little girl, has been absolutely horrendous. And we've had far too many of these attacks, and they're all similar. They seem to be similar dogs. But they also use stuffies. They use all sorts of dogs. I mean, I've been brought up with dogs in a way, and we've had German Shepherds, Dobermans, the Bouvier de Flandre. These are very big dogs. The dogs have gone to school. The dogs have been socialised. The dogs haven't been left with children. And I think we need to start to look at this the other way round, because it is about the owners. A lot of problems arose, I think, through COVID, because a lot of people got dogs that had never had them before. And there's too many people that don't really realise it is an animal. It's not a plaything and it's not a toy. So I think in terms of the owners, I think in this sort of case, and we've seen even much worse than this where people have been killed, I think the owners should be jailed, frankly. I think I'd also
And what would you do to the dog?
Well, the dog, if the dog attacks, the dog has to be destroyed. There's nothing else that you can do. Just to muzzle, I mean, just as an animal, the dog also regulates its temperature through its mouth. So to start, for example, in the hot weather, if you were muzzling everything, it's very hard for the dog to cool down as well. And don't forget, we have service animals. You see people, obviously, the guide dogs for the blind. You've got the other service animals. You've got search and rescue dogs. We've got dogs that we take into the public areas and police dogs. And it's not feasible to be... You can't say, well, we won't muzzle them, but we're going to muzzle yours. So I think there has to be a grown-up discussion about this. It's about education with children at school. It's about educating the adults too. And it's about real prevention and deterrence to say, if you have a dog and it is found to do this, you will be paying the penalty. Your dog will be destroyed in any event. And I think we need to look at some sort of registration schemes.
That's coming through thick and fast.
And I think I need to look at some sort of licensing
without
licensing. It being overly bureaucratic.
That's what people are suggesting to me on the inbox. Des, you say, Michelle, it's simple. All non-dog owners will want dogs muzzled. And most dog owners would want all non-dog owners muzzled. So maybe there is this kind of... Because I don't, you know, I wouldn't want to hurt a dog unnecessarily. I would think that if a dog attacks somebody, I do think, you know, it does have to be put down. I do absolutely share that view. But, you know, I am someone that is quite frightened of dogs. It was the way that I was brought up. I wish that I wasn't. I was told to cross the road any time I saw a dog. And I think that was quite cruel, actually, of my dad to do that, because he's brought me and my siblings up with a fear. And I try not to pass that on to my son. I try to have my son as comfortable as possible when there are dogs around, but I have to put on an act, because often a dog will come over and I am frightened, and I try not to pass that on to my child because I don't want him to be like what I am or what my siblings are. So I think it's kind of there's a two-way street, isn't there? Because I know that all dog owners will say, oh, yeah, my little puppy dog. I've had all these pictures of all these beautiful dogs, and they all say, oh, yeah, he's he won't hurt a fly, he's soft as anything, he's like a member of the family, he's like one of my kids. But then, doesn't everyone say that? If you lined up a lot of these people whose dogs then have gone on to attack people, wouldn't they, if you asked them 2 weeks prior, wouldn't they have said exactly the same thing?
Well, I think some may, but I think some would have known that they had a dangerous dog, frankly. And certainly when you're looking at the attacks that have taken place, the really serious ones.
And you've got a dog.
I have.
Haven't you? I'm very impressed with myself because I've managed to get a picture of it for the viewers to see. Don't mind, I'm not breaching your dog privacy, am I?
No, not at all. The last of the line at the moment is Lollipop, and she was rescued from the Carla Lane Centre.
Lollipop? Let me have a look at Lollipop, everyone.
She's a Staffy cross. She's a little princess, and she's now about, I think, 10 and a half.
Let me see. I need to see Lollipop. There is Lollipop.
She's watching the programme, by the way.
Well, hello, Lollipop. But I'm going to be really... You're going to think I'm really mean, but I don't look at that and see a cute little doggy. Oh. I look at that, I would be quite frightened on looks alone. I've got to be honest, I would. And then when I see that kind of dog, and then I imagine my little boy in his pushchair, I think, would I want that kind of dog going up to my little boy? I don't think I would. I'd be a bit frightened.
Well, it's not the dog going up to your little boy, Michelle. It's the owner who should have the dog on the lead and not take the dog over to small children.
True.
She's half Staffy and half Dalmatian, so goodness knows how that happened.
Well, Jacqueline makes, I think, a very fair point. It's about personal responsibility on the part of the owner, isn't it?
It's all personal responsibility.
Michael said you wouldn't allow people to take tigers onto the high street, would you, Michelle?
No.
And some of these dogs are as dangerous. You are really divided tonight, and maybe it is as simple as what my viewer just said then. If you don't have a dog, maybe you just have one, I don't know, maybe it's a bit of inbuilt whatever, and if you do have a dog, obviously then you're in love with that dog and all the rest of it. It's a debate that won't finish anytime soon. I've got some of your thoughts as well coming up before the end of the programme, but I do want to move on and talk to you about littering. Why do people, when they've got a drive-through, just chuck their rubbish out of the window, just leave it there? There's an idea now, basically, put the licence plate on these wrappers, and if you do that, you'll be tracked down by your car and fined. Good idea or not?
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Baroness Jacqueline Foster remain alongside me, as does Peter Edwards. Lots of you getting in touch about that dog topic. Dave says we need licensing for all dogs and mandatory training. Do you think that would work? Liz, you've put a lot of thought into this. You say we are dog lovers, but we would suggest bringing back the dog licence. She goes on to say you could basically tier it. She suggests the larger the dog, the more money people would have to pay. Would you think that that's fair? And how would you even police that? Because lots of people pointing out that actually a lot of these breeders are not licensed either. Jacqueline was just telling me a story in the break about a rescue dog that she previously had that had been banned with cigarettes. See that? I can't understand why anyone would ever. I mean, why would you do anything like that? And I don't know actually if we're tough enough on people that are cruel on animals, cruel to animals. Anyway, that is a conversation that will rumble on and on, I'm sure. But I want to talk to you about littering. The absolute state of it in this country, it absolutely blows my mind. You see it piled up in so many different places. And when I see people littering, I have been partial to go up to people before and say, you know, you've forgotten something or whatever, and I've been very swiftly told in no uncertain terms where to get off, basically. But there's thoughts and surveys conducted now about whether or not people would support drive-through, you know, places like McDonald's or whatever, printing on licence plate numbers onto the packaging. So if you are indeed one of these people that chucks your stuff out of the window, well, now you can be traced and fined. Would you agree with that?
Well, it's a novel idea, and we're all driven crazy, aren't we, by litter, again, because it's a lack of personal responsibility and it's selfish as well. And it's probably folk in poor areas who suffer from it more. So it's a pretty horrible thing to do.
Sure.
I don't know how enforceable this is. For example, are police going to enforce this system of barcodes? We already know that much bigger issues like burglaries aren't being attended to.
Maybe it would just be a deterrent, though. If you sit there and you think to yourself, do you know what? I'm pretty disgusting, really, just thinking I can chuck all my rubbish out of the car window, but I know I'm not going to get caught, so don't worry about it. If you thought, actually, there's a chance I might be caught, do you think it would be a deterrent? Or do you
I doubt it. I mean, 30
care?
or 40 years ago, I'll see where you're coming from, but 40 years ago, people said that about closed-circuit television. It's everywhere now, isn't it, in town centres, and there's still a lot of crime.
Well, it can't be that everywhere, because that fella that just escaped, Daniel Khalifi from Wandsworth.
Well, he was a trained soldier, so that's a bit different.
Granted, he only got as far as Chiswick, but, you know, notwithstanding that.
But, you know, we all hate litter, right, and it's pretty selfish, but CCTV is not acting as a deterrent. The police are really overworked. We'd all love to see litter cut, but I'm not sure this is really going to be the answer.
So it's a no from Peter. Jacqueline?
Oh, it's a no from me. I mean, you can differentiate between people like fly tipping, which is a massive and expensive problem, and they're trying to deal with that, and I think that's tough enough. I'd have at least a minimum £100 fine everywhere if somebody with their dog allowed it to foul the pavement and it wasn't picked up. I think I've got a real thing about that.
Yeah, disgusting.
And there are also, you know, when people throw litter away, you've got health issues. I mean, if you go to countries with very hot climates, you find they're very strict on people leaving litter everywhere because it encourages rats and it encourages infestations, and also then it can be health issues. So I think it needs to start perhaps a little bit more emphasis again from the kids in school. Make sure that you put your litter in the bin and stuff like that. And adults actually need to set an example. I was behind years ago, somebody in a car, it was a long time ago, and we were at the traffic lights and they threw some rubbish, it was in a village actually, and they threw it out the window. And I'd stopped behind and I got out the car, and they didn't see me, and I picked it up in the bag, and I knocked on the window and I waved, and they waved, and they went, hiya, and they opened the window, and I said, hi, I think you've forgotten something.
Oh,
I said, and they were so
Did you tip
astonished.
it out? Did you empty it out?
No, I just give it them, and I said, don't come back. I said, unless you want to drive through here and not throw your rubbish here. OK, people maybe today be more fearful. But I think we have to stand on a bit of principle here, because we all live in the same place. We all take up the same space.
Well, the principle is very simple. Just don't be disgusting. If you've got your rubbish, take it with you and put it in a bin. It's not difficult, is it? I'd love to send some of our government over to Japan, by the way. They don't have any of this. It's absolutely spotless, their streets. Maybe we could learn a thing or two from them. John says, I am a dog lover, but all dogs should be muzzled outdoors. There are too many dog attacks now. Clive says, it is naive to talk about muzzles and education. The kind of owners that have these dangerous dogs do not care less. They couldn't give a fig, he says. That conversation, it really has. My dog got attacked by a bully breed, and basically the owner could not care less. As one of my viewers, look, time flies when you're having fun. Jacqueline, Peter, thank you at home. Do not go anywhere. Nigel Farage up next. Night.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, we'll be feeling much more like autumn across the UK to start tomorrow morning, but it'll stay cloudy and milder across the southeast. That's because the milder air is being more confined to the southeast, as this front has cleared eastwards across the country throughout today. It's brought quite a lot of heavy rain, and that rain will continue across southeastern areas through this evening. Continued risk of thunderstorms until around 8 or 9 o'clock. But then behind that, we get a lot of cloud across across the southeast. Some rain and drizzle still over the hills and the coast, but many areas seeing clear and dry weather across the rest of the UK. And it will feel much chillier tonight than recently. A touch of frost is possible tomorrow morning in any sheltered Scottish glens. A good deal of sunshine to start the day across the bulk of the country. However, the cloud will thicken through the day, particularly across the northwest, and also elsewhere we'll get some fair weather cloud bubbling up. But in the northwest, we'll see some rain arriving as well. And the temperatures will be a little bit below average for the time of year here. Elsewhere, much closer to the September average, highs of about 18 or 19 degrees. Now, the rain pushes down from Scotland into northern England on Thursday, leaving many parts of northern England and Wales with a damp and cloudy day. Elsewhere, though, drier with a risk of showers in the north. And in the south and east, it will be milder and drier once again. It stays warm across the southeast into the weekend with cooler, fresher weather, more restricted to the north.
The temperature's rising. Boxed solar.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles.